Hey guys, welcome back. And today we're taking a look at the collection of one of the CGWatchfam members. And then I'm going to give some suggestions on what I think good additions would be in the future. So that's coming up right after this. All right, so let's just start by taking a look at everything he's got. This is a picture of all the pieces that he currently has. You can see there is an Invicta Pro Diver, you've got a Laco Flight Watch, then there is a Vintage Concord, a Seiko, a Citizen, and an Orient. So if we take a look at these one at a time, I'd actually like to start with the Citizen. This is a beautiful piece. Okay, so this is a Citizen caliber 9000, I believe, and it's so here's what's really impressive. This thing has a minute repeater. I don't know if you can see that on there. Check that out. It's got a minute repeater, perpetual calendar. You're getting the month, you're getting the day, and it's Eco Drive. So I think Citizen is one of those brands that's incredibly underrated, right? In terms of modern pieces that are mechanical, it could be said that companies like Seiko and Orient are kind of dominating that in terms of modern mechanical movements. But Citizen really does a great job of pushing the complications and the refinement that you can have on solar quartz or eco drive quartz. And for that reason, I kind of think they're one of the watch enthusiast community's best kept secrets, right? Those that can really open their minds and embrace the complications that Citizen can offer you, particularly in the eco drive line, are really able to pick up some unique pieces at really good prices that aren't going to break the bank. I mean, I think a minute repeater, mechanical minute repeater, I mean, we're talking six figures. So that's like, win the lottery a couple times, sell the house, maybe the kids, pimp out the wife. I mean, otherwise, the average person isn't going to have a minute repeater in their collection. So I think it's really cool that he has this piece in there, and I actually think it's beautiful. I know the bracelet is very comfortable. It looks to be pretty similar to the bracelet that came on the Citizen that we looked at on the channel not that long ago. So I like the colors, and I think it's definitely a gorgeous piece. Now, I believe he's had this for 10 years now, so it's not going anywhere, and it's still running strong. Next piece of his that I'd like to take a look at on here is the Laco. So this is obviously classic pilot's watch. What's really cool about this brand, as well as most of you know, especially those of you that checked out the pilot watch video that I did that went over some of the history, is this is one of the original brands that was supplying pilot's watches in World War II. And so there is some genuine history. Another thing that I really love about this brand is that they are very, very transparent in regard to the movements. Those of you that saw the Longines review that I did, I kind of hit on them for giving it an in-house caliber and seeming, disingenuous. This has a very classic Flieger B-type dial, and you can find on their website the information listed for their movements, so they're very straightforward in what it is that they have in there. So this is the caliber Laco 21, and if you look on their website, it's very easy to find out that it's in fact the Miyota 821 Alpha. It has a very, very nice skeletonized rotor on there, but they do make some modifications of their own in addition to just the rotor. They do engrave the rotor and the bridge, and the watchmakers do fine-tune the accuracy of these pieces, so it's not just kind of getting the movement, casing it, and selling it. So there's a little more that's going into Laco putting these particular pieces together with those base movements rather than just casing and selling. I love pilot watches. I love Laco particularly because, as I mentioned, they do have that very real link to history of pilot watches and the role that they played in World War II in providing pieces. So this is a great pickup. I love that he's got this one. This next piece here is really interesting. So it's one of the only, or it is the only vintage piece that he has, and it's a Concord chronometer. So here's what's really, really cool about this piece, actually, is that Concord was one of those brands that really went through its heyday when it was kind of known to be among one of the luxury brands. And then, as so many have, it kind of, died off. But a really cool kind of trivia fact about the Concord is that in 1942, President Truman actually gifted Concord clocks to Stalin and Churchill during the World War II peace talks. So there is some really cool history in this particular brand as well, dating back to the World War II era when it was kind of coming into its own, and it had a very legitimate it had a very legitimate reputation in so much as it was gifted between diplomats during peace talks. It also has a really gorgeous kind of purple sunburst dial. It's chronometer certified Swiss movement, and I do actually very much like the look of this piece as well. The next three we're taking a look at, these are the divers, the three divers that he's got in his collection. Over on the left here, as most of you will recognize, he has an Orient Blu-ray. Then you have the Invicta Pro Diver. This isn't the regular Invicta 8926 OB that I've modded in so many of my videos. This is actually the Invicta 9937, so it has a Swiss movement. Yes, Invicta does sell Pro Divers with Swiss movements, not only Solitas, but ETA movements as well. I think they actually have a chronographic version of this that has the Valjoux movement in it. So that's definitely an interesting fact. Still, pretty good value for this, the quality that you're getting on its price point. And then over on the right, so many of you will recognize this. This is an SKX 175, which is the North American version of the SKX 009 Pepsi. So this is, I mean, it's a really, really solid collection. As we take another look at all of them together, they're pretty evenly split. You've got three divers, then your pilot watch, arguably pieces that could be considered a little bit dressier. So in terms of my suggestions, really, and I'm hesitant to make suggestions or videos kind of suggesting where people should go with their collections, because I do genuinely believe that it's just something that's very personal and you get what you like, whether it's something that has meaning to you, historical meaning, or nothing at all. You get it just because you like the look of it. And I think all those reasons are perfectly okay. But if I were to make a suggestion, I think, when I look at what you've got here, you've got a really, really nice one thing right off the bat that's missing, that I would say is missing in terms of looking at it. If you like chronographs, I think it would be something nice to add and really to complement the kind of vintage Concord that already has a really cool history to it. I do think that a vintage chronograph would be something to consider. I mean, Citizen now, yes, does have a very heavy focus on advancing the complications and the things that they're able to put together with their EcoDrive signature line. But having said that, there are some incredible vintage chronographs to be had, particularly from companies like Citizen, that offer features and characteristics that you now find in modern, what we'd consider more refined chronographs for significantly more money. Things like column wheel chronographs, vertical clutch chronographs that kind of remove the grind of the lateral engagement with the chronograph and give you that smoother sweep of the seconds hands. I mean, those are the kind of refinements that most other companies now kind of gloat about to justify those higher price points. Well, these were characteristics that Citizen had in their chronographs in the 80s and 70s. And so you can pick some of those up, like the ones you're looking at on the screen here, for a relatively low price considering what you're getting. And again, companies like Citizen with their vintage chronographs, those are just suggestions, okay? There's tons of other places that you can look. I'm just going to show you a couple here. These are some sites that I check with some regularity to find some very cool vintage pieces for very decent prices. Here's an Elgin Day-Date automatic diver. Then over here, you have cool vintage watches. This is a site that I check regularly, and they've kind of got them broken down into not only category, but brands, vintage brands to look at. Then there's killer vintage watches. This Belova is one that I was looking at for a while, and I actually think Matt picked one of these up, and it was the one that I wanted. So that's a really cool piece. That, by the way, was a Belova in-house caliber, and look at the price on that. I mean, how much are you paying? Are you going to be paying for something like that now? And a majority of these from these guys from a lot of these vintage sellers have been serviced and are running well. And aside from that, as long as it's keeping time and it's not losing a significant amount of time, it's not really something that you need to panic about in regard to getting it serviced. The only challenge, obviously, that I think is pretty fair to point out that most people will know with vintage pieces is, the water resistance is going to be a challenge. You shouldn't go splashing around in it regardless of whether or not it was a diver, and if you can get the seals replaced on them and then tested, obviously you'd be good to go there. Another place that I like to search is those watch guys. I check all these periodically. I mean, not only Asian market chronographs. We've got something that's like the Croton Skymaster chronograph. You can get Omega chronographs, for example, with the caliber 321 that obviously has a lot of history in regard to the space program and all that. And these are pieces that have some very cool history associated with them, and they don't come with these enormous price tags. So while I think that everything that you've got really in your collection is very cool, if I were going to suggest something, I'd say, look at possibly adding a chronograph. My preference would be seeing if you can find a really sweet deal on a vintage chronograph. Having said that, there's tons of other chronographs to pick from, right? Tudor Heritage has got a good looking chronograph right now at the moment that I'm particularly tempted by. Then there are all the racing style chronographs, right? I have the Citizen Vintage Challenge Timer, which I think is phenomenal. But there are tons of racing style chronographs. I think that's the genre that's most heavily associated with chronographs that I would have to say is my favorite genre. That's what I would look to add. I mean, probably the two most common complications that I'd say are missing when I look at this, not that you need to have them, but most obvious are, a GMT complication and a chronograph. So again, I really would recommend kind of checking out the vintage market and just seeing what you can pick up. Really part of the fun of shopping for something like a vintage piece is researching the company, seeing what the history was before. And if you find a connection to that, I think that makes the hunt and the piece that much more special. So again, this was a look at Gustavo's current collection. I don't know if he's added anything. I'm sorry it took me so long to make this video. It's been a little bit crazy. He's got the Swiss Pro Diver, the Laco Flieger style pilot's watch, which is phenomenal, the Concord with very cool World War II history, the North American version of the SKX 009 Pepsi style, a Citizen Caliber 9000, and an Orient Blu-ray. Take a look at some vintage, whether it's vintage chronograph, a vintage dress piece. There's just some really cool stuff out there for very decent prices. I don't think you need to break the bank to add something that can be very special to you. If you guys have suggestions on pieces that Gustavo can add or that you think he'd be interested in taking a look at, don't hesitate to put those in the comments section below. Thank you very much for sending your pieces to me and allowing me to share this with everybody. I really appreciate it. So if you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And as always, if this is your first time here, don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this. All right, guys, enjoy your weekend. And that's it for this one. CG, out.